Single dad CEO found a nurse crying with her twin babies in a snowstorm, unaware she'd lost everything but hope. The wind howled like a wounded animal across the snow-covered mountain road. Flakes whipped sideways in blinding sheets, and the headlights of Elijah Hartman's black SUV barely pierced the darkness. It was mid-December in Montana, and the storm had hit harder and faster than expected. Elijah gripped the wheel tighter, leather-gloved hands tense. Every mile brought him closer to his secluded estate, and more importantly, to Micah, his 5-year-old son waiting with the nanny. On the passenger seat sat a half-built Lego robot, its arms missing, wires dangling. Elijah had promised Micah they'd finish it tonight. He'd promised a lot lately. The dashboard clock read 9:42 p.m. His eyes burned from the day's negotiations. He was exhausted but drove on, guided more by duty than comfort. That was his life now. Since Brielle's death during childbirth, Elijah had lived in quiet routine: work, parent, repeat. 3 years of building empires by day and heating up dinosaur-shaped nuggets by night. He was halfway through a tight curve when something flickered at the edge of his vision, a blur against the white. He slowed, heart thudding, maybe a deer or a snow-laden tree. But then the headlights cut through the storm, and he saw her. A woman, barely standing, hunched. Not just a woman. She was clutching 2 small children, girls, huddled at her sides, arms tangled like ivy. Elijah slammed the brakes. The SUV skidded before stopping. He froze, breath held, staring. Her blonde hair was tied back, strands clinging to tear-wet cheeks. She looked straight at him, wide, red-rimmed eyes filled not with panic, but bone-deep exhaustion. The girls wore red dresses, faded, frayed, sleeves slipping, threads dangled like ribbons. The hems were stiff with frozen mud, their legs bare, shoes soaked. One whimpered and buried her face into the other's neck. Without thinking, Elijah opened the door. A blast of wind struck him as he stepped out. Snow clung instantly to his coat. Boots crunched through the drift. "Ma'am," he called over the wind, "do you need help?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. She just nodded, holding the girls tighter. He dropped to one knee, wrapped his coat around the children first. Their warmth startled him. They were shivering violently. The smaller one looked up, eyes glassy, then laid her head back on her sister. As he lifted her, a red thread from her dress looped around his finger. It tugged, gentle. He paused, untangled it, then cradled her close. He looked at the mother. "I have a car. It's warm. Let me get you somewhere safe." Her lips trembled. She didn't ask who he was, didn't question, just nodded again. He helped her into the front seat, then tucked both girls in back, blanketing them from his emergency kit. As he shut the door, he noticed the red thread still clinging to his glove. It fluttered in the wind, fragile and stubborn, like fate itself. The car was already warm, but Elijah turned the heat higher. The woman huddled in the front seat, arms wrapped tightly around herself, as if she still could not believe they were out of the snow. In the back, the 2 little girls sat bundled in blankets, pressed close together. One of them, he wasn't sure which, let out a dry, rattling cough. Without hesitation, Elijah popped the trunk and retrieved a compact medical kit. He always kept it there. Years ago, Micah had struggled with asthma, and Elijah had learned to stay prepared. He climbed into the back seat beside the coughing child and gently placed a stethoscope to her back. She flinched, but didn't protest. The faint wheeze in her lungs concerned him. But for now, warmth and rest were the best medicine. "You're okay," he said softly, adjusting her blanket. "You're safe now." He returned to the driver's seat and turned onto a narrower road, the tires crunching through fresh snow. Visibility was poor, but he knew every curve. This path led to his private cabin, tucked deep in the woods, a place he hadn't visited since the last winter spent there with his wife. The car was quiet, broken only by the heater's hum and occasional sniffles. Then, the woman spoke, her voice faint. "Thank you. I didn't know where else to go." He glanced at her. Her damp blonde hair clung to her cheek. She looked young, too young to carry that much sorrow. "I'm Elijah," he said. She hesitated. "Melody, Quinn." He nodded. "We'll be at my cabin soon. It's not far. There's heat, food, dry clothes. The girls can rest." A pause. Then, just above the hum, "I lost my apartment yesterday. I've been calling shelters all day. They're full. I sold almost everything just to feed my girls. I only kept their red dresses because they love them." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. Melody stared straight ahead, twisting her fingers in her lap. "I don't have anything left," she said, her voice breaking. "Just them." 20 minutes later, the cabin came into view. Lights flicked on with the motion sensor, casting a golden glow on the porch. Melody's breath caught at the sight. The contrast between their desperation and this sanctuary was stark. Elijah helped the girls inside first. Then he guided Melody toward the fireplace, returning with blankets, towels, and mugs of hot cocoa. The girls' cheeks were pink now, thawing as they sipped from their mugs with trembling hands. In the guest room, Elijah rummaged through a closet and found one of Brielle's sweaters, ivory, soft, and oversized. He held it for a moment, thumb brushing the hem, then brought it to Melody. "You can wear this," he said gently. "It should be warm." She hesitated, then whispered, "Thank you." He returned moments later with a folded pile of Micah's old clothes, hoodies, socks, slippers. He placed them on the couch beside the girls. One of them reached for a stuffed bear tucked between the hoodies. "That's Captain Bobo," Elijah said, smiling. "Micah used to carry him everywhere." "Micah?" Melody asked. "My son. He's 5, with his nanny right now." She nodded. "You're a single parent too." Elijah didn't answer. He crouched by the fireplace, folding towels and placing them within reach. Melody stood nearby, holding the sweater. Her eyes suddenly brimmed with tears. She turned away, but not fast enough. "You okay?" he asked. She let out a shaky breath. "It's just been a long time since someone cared enough to fold a towel for me." He looked at her, firelight dancing across her face. "You and your girls are safe here. That's all that matters." Later, while she helped the girls into dry clothes, Elijah quietly placed a new silver hair clip next to the sink. He had seen the stretched-out elastic she used, the way strands of her hair clung to it. He said nothing. The girls eventually drifted to sleep on the couch, curled up under layers of blankets. Melody sat close, watching their small chests rise and fall. Elijah stoked the fire, its soft glow filling the room. 3 figures, 2 asleep, 1 silently watching, and a man, seated nearby, listening to the storm still raging outside. But inside the cabin, something fragile had begun to settle. Not just warmth, something closer to hope. The cabin had grown quiet. The storm outside had dulled to a steady hush, muffled by thick snow blanketing the world. Inside, only the fire crackled, soft, constant. The twins, Lily and Rosie, were asleep on the couch, curled beneath a heavy wool blanket, their tiny fingers still tangled even in sleep. Melody sat at the small wooden kitchen table, both hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea. Her blonde hair, still damp from earlier, had fallen loose from its ponytail, strands framing her tired face. She stared into her cup, unmoving. Across from her, Elijah sat quietly, mirroring her. The light above them was warm, casting a gentle golden hue across the tabletop and their faces. It wasn't awkward. It was still, like the calm between 2 people who had carried too much for too long. Melody broke the silence first. Her voice was low, cautious. "I was a pediatric nurse for 6 years," she said, eyes on her tea, "at a small community hospital near Bozeman." Elijah didn't speak. He nodded, letting her go on. "I loved it. The kids. The chaos. The tiny victories." She smiled faintly. "Then, during my 3rd trimester, my husband was in a car accident. Head on his way home from work." Her voice cracked. "He died before I got to the hospital." She blinked hard, forcing herself to keep talking. I gave birth a month later, alone, no family nearby. I went back to work as soon as I could stand, juggled double shifts, daycare, doctor's visits. I thought I was making it work. Her grip on the mug tightened. Then the hospital got bought out. Budget cuts. They shut down our unit, let all the senior staff go. No warning, no severance, just gone. She finally looked up. There was no anger, just exhaustion and pain, and something deeper, something Elijah understood. I tried to keep up, took temp jobs, sold things, gave up our apartment when I couldn't cover rent. I thought I could hold on. A pause. A bitter smile. I was wrong. Her words settled into the silence. Elijah set his cup down gently, fingers resting on the rim. "My wife's name was Brielle," he said quietly. "She had a rough pregnancy, but we thought we were through it. Micah was born early, but healthy. Then, she had complications." He stared past Melody. I sat by her bed all night, watched the monitors slow, then stop. A beat. And then it was just me, and a baby I didn't know how to raise. He leaned back slightly. I didn't take time off, didn't grieve, just existed. Wake up, feed Micah, work, repeat, for 3 years. Melody's gaze stayed on him. "That's what it feels like," she whispered. "Like you're underwater, and everyone else is breathing." He nodded, slowly. "I kept hoping someone would notice," she said, "that someone would ask if I was okay. Maybe someone would help." She paused, but no one did. Elijah looked at her, really looked. "No one helped me either," he said, "so I made myself a promise." He reached into the drawer beside him and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was clearly a child's drawing, crayon lines, scribbles, colors outside the lines. He unfolded it and handed it to her. It was a picture of 3 stick figures standing beneath a gray cloud. Raindrops fell, one tall figure and 2 smaller ones holding hands. The tallest held an umbrella over them all. Beneath it, in shaky letters, "A lady and her kids." Melody brought a hand to her mouth. "Micah drew that last night," Elijah said. "He didn't say anything, just handed it to me." She stared at the drawing, silent. "He sees you," Elijah added, "even if you think no one does." Tears slipped down Melody's cheeks, but for the first time in a long while, she didn't turn away. The snow did not stop the next day, or the one after that. Drifts rose high along the mountain road, making it impossible for Elijah to drive Melody and her daughters anywhere, even if they had somewhere to go. But she did not complain, not once. Neither did Elijah offer to rush the arrangement. There was an unspoken understanding between them now, quiet, simple, and oddly comforting. So they stayed. Melody took over the small kitchen like she had always belonged there. She found flour in the pantry and made cookies with Rosie and Lily, standing on stools beside her, cheeks dusted in white powder. Their giggles bounced off the log walls, waking up corners of the cabin that had been silent for years. Micah had kept his distance at first. He was a quiet child by nature, watchful and reserved. But Rosie, the braver of the 2 girls, marched up to him that first morning with a snowball in each hand and declared a snow war. He didn't respond with words. But when Elijah peeked out the cabin window 10 minutes later, all 3 children were outside, bundled in oversized coats and scarves, rolling in the snow and laughing. It was the first time Elijah had heard Micah laugh like that in months. Inside, the house shifted. Melody dusted windowsills, wiped counters, folded the laundry Elijah had left untouched for weeks. She didn't move like a guest. She moved like someone who knew how to build a home, even from broken pieces. She taught the kids how to fold paper cranes from old magazines. Micah followed her instructions intently, his tongue poking out in concentration, while Rosie colored the wings with a pink crayon and insisted they could fly if you wished hard enough. Elijah sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, work files open but untouched. His eyes kept drifting to the floor where the children sat cross-legged, surrounded by a mess of paper, markers, and glitter. He had forgotten what that kind of mess looked like, what it sounded like. Later that afternoon, Rosie let out a cry. The well-worn bear, Captain Bobo, had ripped along the seam. Its stuffing poked out like tiny clouds. She looked up at Elijah with wide, teary eyes, hugging the limp bear to her chest. Melody took it from her gently. "Let me see, sweetheart." She sat down by the fireplace, pulled a sewing kit from her bag, and threaded a needle with calm, practiced fingers. Rosie sniffled beside her as Melody began stitching the torn fabric. Micah stood nearby, watching silently. When she finished, tying off the final knot, she handed the bear back to Rosie and smiled. "There," she said, "good as new." Micah's voice was soft when it came, barely more than a breath. "Can you fix everything?" Melody looked at him. His brown eyes were earnest, serious in the way only a child's could be. "Not everything," she said gently, "but the things that matter, I'll always try." Micah didn't reply, but he nodded once, then turned and quietly joined Rosie and Lily near the fireplace. That was enough. That night, the fire glowed warmly as the children curled up in a pile of blankets and yawns. Elijah had prepared the guest room for Melody, but she never used it. Instead, she slept right there in the living room, between her daughters, one arm curled around Rosie, a leg stretched over Lily to keep her warm. Elijah passed by in the dark and paused. She was still wearing the sweater he had given her. Her hair had come loose again, golden strands catching the flicker of the firelight. Her breathing was steady, peaceful. It struck him then, this woman who had arrived in a storm, who had nothing but a pair of red dresses and two tiny hands clutching hers, had somehow filled the cabin with something he thought he had lost forever. Life, warmth, home. The snow finally melted. Plows cleared the mountain roads, the sun showed itself again, and life, as it always did, began to move forward. Melody packed up the few things she had brought, and yet, she didn't leave. Not right away. That morning, Elijah stood by the front door, hands tucked into his coat pockets, watching her zip up one of the twins' jackets. "You and the girls," he said carefully. "You can stay a little longer. A few weeks, maybe, until things settle." Melody looked up, her face unreadable. For a second Elijah thought she might say no out of pride, but then with a nod she whispered, "Thank you." She didn't stay idle. By the third day, she was scanning bulletin boards at local clinics, asking around with quiet resolve. She didn't beg, didn't complain. She simply moved forward, one step at a time. Elijah admired her for it. That quiet determination, the way she refused to let her pain be her only story. What she didn't know was that Elijah had already called in a favor. A friend owned a private family practice nearby. They were hiring. He mentioned her name, once, casually, no pressure. That night, she came home flushed and glowing, her hands stuffed in her coat pockets. "I got the job," she said breathlessly. "I start next week." "It's not much," she added, a bit shy, "but it's something." A week later, she signed the lease on a modest two-bedroom apartment near Micah's school. The neighborhood was quiet. The playground out front was old but clean. Trees lined the sidewalk. Elijah helped her move in. They didn't drift apart. If anything, their lives wove closer. School drop-offs turned into shared coffee stops. Grocery runs became full-on outings with 3 giggling kids in tow. Sunday afternoons were now for watching the children build Lego castles on Elijah's floor and draw chalk galaxies in the driveway. There was no big conversation about it, no labels, just presence, just peace. Elijah found himself smiling at things he used to ignore. Melody's soft humming while she packed school lunches. The way she always poured 2 mugs of tea, even when he hadn't said he'd stop by. The sound of laughter in rooms that used to echo with silence. Still, neither pushed past the invisible line drawn by grief and time. They lived beside it. A wall of memory neither dared to touch too hard. The fear of loss had carved itself into both of them. Then came Lily and Rosie's birthday. Elijah offered to host a small party at his house. Melody hesitated, but the girls squealed with delight, and she gave in with a quiet smile. Elijah strung lights across the ceiling. Micah helped stir frosting. Melody baked cupcakes topped with bright strawberries. Only a few guests came, just enough to fill the room with warmth. When it was time for candles, the three children stood close, their faces glowing with excitement. Melody stood a little behind them, hands clasped, smiling gently. That's when Elijah moved beside her. She didn't speak, didn't look. He reached out his hand. "Dance with me?" he asked. Soft music played through a dusty speaker in the corner. The light above them was warm, golden. For a second, Melody hesitated. Then, she reached for his hand. They swayed in silence, her head near his shoulder, the children's laughter a soft hum in the background. No words, just knowing. Later that night, the house quiet, Elijah walked into the study to switch off the lamp. On the desk was a sheet of paper. Crayons, stick figures, bright colors. Micah's name scribbled in the corner. It was a drawing of Melody in a white dress, standing beside Elijah under an arch of flowers. Rosie and Lily grinned at her feet. Micah stood close, holding her hand. Below it, in crooked, determined letters, "Mom." Elijah sat down slowly. His fingers brushed the page. And for the first time in a long time, he let the hope in. The phone rang late on a Tuesday night. Elijah had just finished reading Micah a bedtime story when he saw Melody's name flash across the screen. He picked up quickly, but it wasn't her voice. It was the neighbor who sometimes helped with Lily and Rosie after school. "She collapsed," the woman said. "Fever. Exhaustion. I'm with her now. She needs rest." Elijah was out the door in minutes. When he arrived at Melody's apartment, she was curled on the couch, pale, damp with sweat, her breathing shallow. The twins were sitting beside her, frightened and quiet, holding each other's hands like anchors. Elijah didn't hesitate. He gathered them all, Melody, Lily, and Rosie, and brought them back to his home. Micah met them at the door with juice boxes and a fuzzy blanket already in hand. He settled the girls in Micah's room with warm milk and soft music, then returned to Melody. She lay on the guest bed, eyes fluttering, trying to stay awake. "I'm sorry," she whispered hoarsely. "I didn't want to be a burden." "You're not," Elijah said gently, adjusting the blanket over her. "You're safe. Just rest." But something inside him tightened. For the next 2 days, Elijah handled everything: meals, kids, medicine, housework. He stayed organized, attentive, precise, but distant, focused. He didn't linger in her room, didn't make conversation. His warmth turned to politeness, his affection to obligation. Melody felt it like a cold wind through a cracked window. On the third night, when the kids were asleep, Elijah brought her tea. He set it on the nightstand without a word and turned to go. "Elijah," she said softly. He stopped, back still turned. "Are you scared?" He didn't answer right away. Then he turned, slowly. His eyes were red, though he hadn't cried. "I'm not scared," he said, but it didn't sound true. He swallowed. I can't go through it again. Losing someone. I barely made it through the first time." Melody nodded, her face calm but tender. "You're not the only one afraid." He sat down in the armchair across from her, rigid, guarded. She continued, "Love doesn't promise you'll never hurt again. It only promises someone will be there when it does." He looked at her. Really looked. At the strength in her tired face. At the softness in her voice. Even after everything. "I shut myself off after Claire died," he said. "I didn't know how else to survive. Micah gave me purpose, but not life, not joy." Melody's voice was quiet. "And now? Now it all came back. And it terrifies me." A silence followed. Then Elijah bowed his head into his hands and cried. It wasn't loud, but it was deep. Years of holding it in cracked open in one moment of truth. His shoulders shook, his breath caught. He couldn't stop. Melody rose from the bed and crossed the room slowly. She sat beside him and wrapped her arms around him. No words, just warmth, just presence. They sat like that for a long time, the fire burning low. When the tears faded, Melody whispered, "We can't undo what hurt us, but we can choose what comes next." Ah, his voice broke. "What if I'm not ready?" "Then we take small steps," she said, "together." Later that night, Elijah returned to check on her. The room was dim. Melody was asleep, but on the bed beside her pillow sat Captain Bobo, Micah's old stuffed bear. Tucked under the bear's paw was a folded piece of paper. Elijah picked it up and opened it. A few uneven words, written in crayon. "A new mom doesn't have to be perfect. She just has to be real." He stared at it. His throat tightened. Upstairs, Micah was already asleep, curled beneath the same blanket he'd clung to the night Claire died. And in that moment, Elijah understood what his son had already accepted. They weren't trying to replace what was lost. They were making room for what still could be found. Sometimes, love wasn't about protecting yourself from pain. It was about choosing to love, even when it might hurt again. The days flowed easier now. Melody had moved in 3 months ago, not out of necessity, but choice. Her name was on the mailbox now, not in place of Elijah's, but beside it. She still worked full-time at the clinic, and Elijah ran meetings from his home office. They had separate calendars, separate coffee mugs, separate morning playlists, but everything else? Shared. The kids, especially, had merged into one small, unstoppable pack. Micah had taken on the role of protective big brother, like it was instinct, not assignment. Lily and Rosie ruled the living room with matching giggles and hair clips. On Friday nights, all 5 of them rolled dough for homemade pizza, flour on noses, laughter spilling through the kitchen. Sundays were for pajamas and movie marathons under a mountain of blankets. It felt like a rhythm, one they didn't want to break. It was a crisp October afternoon when Elijah set his plan into motion. The backyard was covered in golden leaves. Melody was helping Rosie thread sticks together for a makeshift fairy tent, while Lily bossed Micah around about how many pillows a castle fort needed. Elijah sipped his coffee and watched them, all of them, his heart aching in the best possible way. He knelt down beside Micah, whispered something in his ear. Micah's eyes lit up. Moments later, Elijah called out casually, "Hey, team, come here for a second?" 3 little heads popped up from behind blankets and leaf piles. He motioned them over, crouching to their level. "So, I've been thinking," he began, glancing at Melody from the corner of his eye. "Do you think Melody should officially be part of this family? Like, forever?" "Yes," Lily shouted before the others could respond. "Totally," Micah added with a grin. "Can she still make waffles if she's part of the family?" Rosie asked seriously. "I think that's in the contract." Elijah nodded solemnly. "Then yes," Rosie declared. Melody stood a few steps away, her hand still holding a twig, her smile frozen in surprise. Elijah rose slowly, his voice softer now. "Melody Quinn, what if we made this chaos permanent?" She didn't speak, not right away. Micah stepped forward and handed her a small, square Lego box, one of his custom builds, slightly lopsided and dotted with mismatched colors. "Open it," he whispered. Inside, nestled between tiny plastic bricks, was a simple gold ring. Melody's hands trembled as she looked up, eyes wide with something between joy and disbelief. Elijah didn't kneel. He didn't have to. "I know this wasn't the plan. None of it was. But you walked into our storm, and somehow turned it into home." The backyard was still, the autumn breeze rustling leaves like applause. Melody's voice cracked. "You sure you're ready for this circus?" He laughed. "I built the tent." She didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, voice thick with emotion. "1,000 times, yes." The kids erupted into a chorus of squeals and celebratory leaf-throwing. Micah jumped into Elijah's arms, Rosie hugged Melody's leg, and Lily demanded to know when the wedding would be and if she could wear sparkles. Later that evening, after the backyard had quieted and bedtime stories had been read, Elijah found the Lego box sitting on the kitchen counter. He picked it up, smiled. A family made of pieces, none of them matching. All of them chosen. The air smelled like pine and snowfall. At the edge of the Montana woods, the old cabin glowed under a veil of fresh snow, the same place where two lives had once collided. Now, it was dressed in fairy lights and pine garlands, the porch swept clean, a small fire pit crackling out front. Elijah stood near the hearth, adjusting the collar of his wool jacket. No suits, no ties, just him, real, grounded, nervous in the best way. Then he saw her. Melody stepped out from the back room in a simple white dress that brushed her calves. Her hair was tied in a ponytail, and nestled above her ear was the delicate hair clip he'd left by the sink that snowy night. It shimmered under the lights like a quiet memory. She smiled, cheeks pink from the cold. "I was hoping you'd still like the clip," she said. "I never stopped." The ceremony was small, 10 people total. Their neighbor Mrs. Langley cried before the vows even began. Chairs were arranged in 2 tidy rows on the porch. Micah stood proudly between Rosie and Lily, each holding a folded card. When the officiant nodded, the kids stepped forward. Micah began. "We're not just a family because of rings or weddings." Rosie chimed in. "We're a family because we choose each other." Lily smiled wide. "And we don't give up, even when things get hard." Elijah blinked fast. Melody squeezed his hand. Then came their vows. Elijah spoke first. "You walked into my life carrying everything that mattered in your arms, and you gave me back something I thought I'd lost, a reason to come home." "I didn't save you that night, Melody. You saved me." Melody wiped a tear. Her voice shook but held steady. "You saw me when I was invisible. You didn't look away. You gave my girls warmth, safety, and showed me that love after loss is still love, just braver." Their kiss was quiet, full of gratitude and promise. Snow kept falling, like confetti made of stars. That night, the cabin held more than music and laughter. It held something sacred, a future reimagined. Later, after guests had gone and the fire died down, Elijah and Melody stepped onto the porch. They sat side by side, wrapped in a blanket, just as they had many nights before. From inside came the sound of Micah's voice reading aloud, calm and steady. And then the father, the mother, and the 3 kids built a house out of snow and dreams, and no one was ever cold again. Melody smiled, resting her head on Elijah's shoulder. "Do you ever wonder," he asked softly, "what would have happened if I hadn't stopped that night?" She chuckled. "I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't dressed them in those ridiculous red dresses." They weren't ridiculous. They were unraveling. "Still," he said, "those threads pulled me straight to you." She leaned in closer, breath warm in the night air. "We didn't save each other, Elijah." He nodded, eyes never leaving hers. "No, we made each other whole. And we're not a family because it started perfectly," she added. "We're a family because no one walked away." The snow kept falling. Inside, 3 children slept beneath one roof, 2 girls who no longer woke up, shivering, and 1 boy who no longer felt something was missing. On the porch where it all began, Elijah and Melody sat in peace, not haunted by the past, but humbled by what they'd built. A love born in a storm. A home built on second chances. A family, chosen, not by blood, but by courage. And so, in the heart of a snowstorm, a stranger became a safe place, a cabin became a home, and love, quiet and brave, found its way back to 2 broken hearts. This isn't a story about rescue. It's about choosing love again, even when it's hard. If this touched your heart, hit that hype button and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more tales that heal, inspire, and stay with you. Your support keeps these stories alive. Until next time, believe in kindness, choose love, and remember, even in the storm, someone might be waiting just to bring you home.